Unlike you blind boys, I just have astigmatism.
Yeah, but you're deaf.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. So,
Ferg just went for the gut punch right away. He's like, oh yeah?
That was so fucking mean.
I don't even have a retort to that.
You should just come with, huh?
Come again?
Huh?
Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, a show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about Amen. Amen went 110 episodes over 5 seasons on NBC. Today we're talking about episode 1. It was called Pilot, originally airing September 27th, 1986. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, the boys, Joe, Ferg, Nick, and Gordo. What's going on, guys?
Hey, yo.
Get the lead out, Wheezy. It's so hard. I'm not doing Jeffersons, but like when I see Sherman Hemsley, my brain immediately just yells, "Get the lead out, Wheezy."
That's a show we still have to cover, is the Jeffersons, but
That would be infinitely more fun to cover, I'm sure.
I
Just cover Mr. Nanny since he's in that.
He is so good in Mr. Nanny. He gets shot in the leg by David Johansen.
my brain goes to dinosaurs all the time, and Fresh Prince. Shows that he wasn't even like the main guy in, but
The great thing about him is that he was him in everything.
Yeah, no range.
although in Dinosaurs, a very big man instead of being a very small man.
I'm blanking on him in Fresh Prince.
He plays himself like twice
He was the judge.
and a judge, yeah.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, okay. I remember now. Yep.
I think there's actually an episode where him and Wheezy run through the house.
They were like a potential buyer, right?
Yeah.
It was like one of the last episodes.
I think that's right. Yep.
But you know what he never did? Slap somebody in the face and ruin his whole career like Will Smith did.
Well, they'll have a bounce back. People get over that stuff pretty quick.
Bad Boys is in theaters right now, I think, isn't it? He's doing okay, I think.
I do want to see it. I do love the Bad Boys movies.
What you gonna do?
So now, Joe, this show is your pick. A little curious to me because, like, we did Living Biblically, and it's a show that I think you only canceled because you hated how religious it was. And now you're picking Amen, a super religious show that's about nothing but religion.
And it panders so hard.
I'll say this. I fell in love with this show. I had a job when we were 16-ish in the summer working at a sewage treatment plant, which was a wild thing that I have a million stories for anyway. But I had to be there super early, which is kind of hard as a high schooler, waking up super early in the morning. But I had to get up at 6 every morning. I had to leave the house at 7 to be there at 7:30. And TBS at that time played Amen and 227 from 6 to 7. So for an entire summer, this is what I watched before going to work. And they both just like burnt into my brain as shows I absolutely love. We'll definitely cover 227 at some point. Did we do Sister Sister? I think we did.
Not yet, no.
No.
Not yet, okay.
We did Smart Guy.
We did Smart Guy featuring their brother, yeah.
That's what it was, yeah. But, you know, Jack A from 227 and Sister Sister. There might be 2 other ones. There could be a Jack A month. Jack A June next month. Well, next year, we'll see.
You know what's funny? I mean, this show comes out, I'm 4 months old, all right? But for a show like this that went 110 episodes, 5 seasons, was pretty popular when it came out. I've never heard about this show until you selected it. I had no idea the show
Same.
existed.
Yeah,
Me
too.
neither. When this started, I expected a weird old British dude to be like, "Hello, amen," and then Sherman Hemsley walks on.
But it's funny because he's so funny, but it only got like 6 a.m. syndication. So if you're not up watching TV at that time, like who is, right? It just happened to work for me.
I would have at least known about it. It's just weird that like that one went past my head. I don't know. I guess that surprised me.
Again, though, a show that was never in syndication very heavily and has never been released on DVD and I don't believe is streaming anywhere. Like those shows just kind of disappear in our lives, you know?
I think it also speaks to just like the sheer number of sitcoms that exist, you know? Like
True.
things can just get lost in the ocean sometimes.
I think if anything has like opened our eyes over the last few years doing this show, it's like truly how many shows there are. Because like I know like early on when we would talk to people and we would tell them about the show, like, well, how long can you do that for? And the answer is forever. There's so many shows, you know, it's insane.
Someone asked me that the other day as well, and I said, well, you know, we haven't even really scratched the surface.
Yeah, I mean, just the big shows we haven't done.
I mean, there's that joke in Parks and Rec where Aziz Ansari's making his own show, like Time to Know Your Boo, and they were like, "Why would you make this?" And he's like, "Because there's a million channels and they all need content." Like, that's so accurate. Like, there were, especially back then too, and there's like the over-the-air channels you don't even get anymore, where it's like, "Oh, it's Cozy Point 2." Like, you only get if you have an antenna over the air. Like, it's not even on cable. Like, there's just shit playing forever. There's been so many sitcoms.
But even then, it's just like you look at a show like this that ran for 5 years in the 80s that was on NBC when there was only a few channels and 4 of us never heard of it. You know what I mean? So it's like when you look at things like that, like just the amount of shows that are out there, it really is a crazy number.
I will say, though, as somebody who, this is like the Randall Clerks thing, right? Where it's like, you hate religion. He's like, yeah, but I love religious stuff. I don't know what it is. I find this show incredibly charming, even though talk about God and all that stuff usually makes me completely lose my mind.
Well, making shows like that, picks like this, like these shows, are why you deserve every second of Selfie.
How dare you? This is a good show with Sherman Hemsley in it.
It's not.
No.
Like, I don't know where you're pulling this good show shit from. It's not. It's not.
We'll talk about it.
I think this is super funny. I was on Etsy looking at somebody who had a Blu-ray box set of the entire series bootleg. I just need to see screen caps because, to be fair, the version we watched was a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, you're limited in these situations for sure. IMDb has this as a 6.8, so it's not like, you know, I think people are okay on it. You know, it wasn't like a highly loved or hated show. It was just, you know, kind of middle of the pack. Rotten Tomatoes had nothing, not even like specific season score. It was empty.
That's a good point. I'm surprised it's not on Peacock.
It should be.
It being an NBC show, and they're desperate for content. Like, all these streaming platforms come out, and like, look at Disney bought Fox just to have content for Disney Plus. It's like, you think
Right.
Paramount or Peacock, which I just said, would have been desperate because they have a lot of stuff, but they don't have that much on the app.
Isn't that a crazy thing when you say that? That's like buying the Marriott so you have a place to swim. You know, like, you know, it's so crazy. And then real quick before we get started, just want to remind everyone, go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links to our socials. We got merch, all that stuff. Rate, review, subscribe on those things. Follow us on our socials like Instagram and X at S1E1pod. We like doing interactions with you guys when you guys hit us up. So suggestions and stuff are always welcome. So be sure to hit us up on those.
And this week too, because we're keeping with a trend of making a new merch item for every episode we do. If you go to our TeePublic store, you will see a Sherman Hemsley praying hands foam hand set that say amen when you open them. They're a little expensive, but I think it's worth the expense.
We could have things like that made, but we would need a much larger demand than what I think we would have on that. And we'd have to find a different place to sell it because TeePublic is not somewhere we could do that. But in any event, we have a few shirts, and we might as well get into the show itself. Starts right with the intro. And we're hearing church choir singing a song called Shine On Me. And that's when we first meet Sherman Hemsley's character, Deacon Ernest Frye. And you see him park his car. Then he does some double dutch and walks into a church. It's
Wait, it's not Ernest Frye. It's Thurman Frye.
I thought when I looked it up.
It was a Thurman Sparky plug.
On IMDb, it says Deacon Ernest Frye.
Hold on.
Oh, mister, I love this show. It gets the character on.
I know. It's burned into my brain. I watched it for so long.
I watched it for one summer when I was 16, which was 22 years ago. If I got his first name wrong, I apologize, but I don't think it was...
Yeah, no, it's Ernest.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, I guess I deserve a bumper sandwich because I'm a booger lips, and I apologize for getting the Ernest wrong.
I get it. There's only room in this world for one Ernest. And at this time, our Ernest was still alive.
That's true. Maybe Jim Varney maybe I was just thinking about watching old wrestling and Thurman popped into my head.
Or maybe you were playing the Thurman.
Playing my Thurman. That also is shaped like Sherman Hemsley.
By the way, do you think they used like a double to do the double dutch?
No, I don't think so, because it was one shot. It was one continuous shot.
I was astounded by how good his double dutch was.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah, I know. Typically, you would think that's what they would do, but because they never cut, it was one solid shot from when he parked on. So there was no way you could have cut it.
I mean, he was, if you think about the Jeffersons, especially, like, he's pretty animated in All in the Family, but in the Jeffersons, he's always moving, he's dancing, he's jumping on people's backs. Like, he was always a very physical sort of comedic actor, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and then he got shot in the leg with Hulk Hogan.
It's true. Well, because he made fun of the New York Dolls, and David Johansen was like, how dare you make fun of me?
But he was like 48 years old at the time, too. It's not like, he was no spring chick in this show, but.
He's got 10 years on all of us here. Can anybody here say that they could do a double dutch? Because I fucking can't.
No, I couldn't when I was 28, though. So
Right.
Do I get to practice?
All right. Okay. I see a challenge. I want a video of both Nick and Gordo successfully performing double dutch.
Okay. All right. You got to come down and you got to come down and swing the rope.
Look,
No, it'd be way more impressive if you do it without rope. Like Will Ferrell juggling.
Yeah. Did you see that somebody CGI'd the balls into his hand for the video? It's fucking amazing. Yeah. That is what technology is here for, guys.
So as far as the intro goes, a little random, but I guess fine.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't tell me much, but the double dutch threw me off.
All you know is it's going to be based in a church. That's all you really needed.
I disagree. I think the intro told us a lot. It told us, like, you see his parking spot that's like absolutely no parking. Just don't even think about it and think as underlines. You're like, okay, this guy's a bit of a shithead. But then he's dancing with kids and you're like, okay, he's got a good heart. To me, that says like, okay, he's a curmudgeon who has a good heart and he works in a church. Like, I thought that explained the whole story of his character to me.
Or maybe he has a lot of people parking his spot, so he made a sign. You're hating on him for defending his property.
I'm not hating on him. I'm saying it makes him curmudgeonly. Also, this church is still there. The church they shot this at, and looks exactly the same. I Google Earthed it today and was like, wow, that's amazing. They there's no like different landscaping or painting. It's just like exactly like this.
Is it actually in Philadelphia? I know it's supposed to be set in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's a real church. I have the name of it. It's the
in the show it's First Community Church.
Yeah, it's got a different name now.
Is it Thurman Church?
It's Thurman Sparky Plug Congressional Maid of Honor. Sorry, it's in my notes. I'll find it. But it's a church that you can look it up. It's if you just look up Amen Church, it actually pops up because it's like sort of known as that thing. So I've been all over Pennsylvania, but weirdly never to Philadelphia. When I make it to Philadelphia, I will for sure take a picture in front of that church.
Me and Ferg were just there a few months ago, had we known. The intro transitions right into the first scene. So it's kind of, you see him walking through the church, and then it kind of goes right into that first scene where he's introduced by Michelle, who's the receptionist, or she's a sister, right? Is she one of the sisters?
Okay, so if this is what's confusing, she is his secretary.
Okay.
And she's a sister, but she's not a nun. Her and the woman who keeps the minutes, who's like treasurer or whatever, they're both sisters, and they refer to them as the sisters, but they're not nuns. That's what's confusing about it, especially because she gets all horny for the new reverend later on.
So also, too, he's a deacon, and that's typically not, we grew up Catholic, but a deacon is a layperson that's ordained. And that's what I was expecting him to be Catholic. But I didn't know deacons in whatever denomination is like the head of the church. I don't know. It was interesting to me.
A deacon, from what I gathered, because I had to look it up too, because mainly my knowledge of deacons is the Showcase Showdown song, Oi Oi Deacon. They are basically an ordained minister who's one step below a priest.
Yeah.
So I don't think that means that every deacon is in a position of running things the way that he is. I think he has that because it's his dad's church that was passed on to him.
Well, I think I don't know. I didn't look that deep into it, but I don't know if they're Baptist or they're Methodist or whatever. And that could mean something completely different in that versus Catholic.
What if they're all wrestlers and he's Deacon Batista?
I mean, that's very true.
Well, then he would know Hulk Hogan, although Hulk Hogan, from what I know of Hulk Hogan, probably not a fan of anybody in this church.
So Deacon walks in, sees Michelle. She's telling him like, oh, don't go in there. The Reverend's working on his sermon. He doesn't want to be disturbed. And he doesn't listen and walks right in. And that's when he has an interaction with the Reverend of the church. His whole thing was like, he has to talk to him about some stuff. Now, you remember, like, the deacon's character here is he does like kind of like run the church. So the financials and all that stuff do mean something to him. But what was interesting here is he's getting on him. He's telling him, hey, you've been here as the pastor for the last 6 months. Since then, our attendance is down 12%, collections down 33%, and your weight's up to 50%. And then just goes on and on about his weight. I would have thought that the money stuff was probably a little more important, but the whole scene after that is him just focusing on the weight stuff.
This is one of those
yeah.
thankless casting things we talk about sometimes where it's like, hey, do you want to be on this show with Sherman Hemsley? Like, yeah, like he's going to make fun of you. But like, yeah, but like he's just going to call you fat for 5 minutes and then you're never going to be on the show again.
This made me uncomfortable. I felt bad for this guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not like that. I love a good fat joke. I say people are too soft now. And I'm like, this poor fellow, like he's just getting torn apart because it went on for so long that it made me uncomfortable.
It's a little much, to be honest. Also, I'm not trying to get into like theological stuff or weird stuff, but we all grew up again around Catholicism. At one point, he was like, you can't preach about the evils of hard liquor. To which I was like, I don't remember Catholicism being like, beer is fine, everybody. Like, you can have as much beer as you want, but one whiskey, it seems a bit rough. Like, that seems specific not to like over drinking, seems like the thing you'd say.
It was interesting to me because he was going on and on and on about the weight, which is like, whatever. It got to the point where I almost wondered, does he think this is why business is down? Like, people don't like that he's fat?
It's an aesthetic business, baby.
I think that he thinks that he's pocketing some of the money because he's eating well, but they're not bringing in that much.
Well, no, the sisters are bringing the food for him, though.
Yeah.
He has 4 pies. They don't bring in just 1 pie for him. They're like, lunchtime.
Yeah, who's paying for the pies?
They are out of the goodness of their heart.
Well, no, yeah, I don't think that was out of like church funds. He's saying the collections are down in general. I think it's just less people are going to church, but it just seemed weird that he lumped that all in together and just really piled on about the way. I don't think that other stuff was unintentionally important. So it's almost like he shouldn't have said any of that stuff and just got on him about the weight because it confused the message a little bit there.
I know this is a bit inside baseball, and maybe it isn't, but to me, also the reference here was like, how does the Jefferson song end, right? Which is like one of the most famous sitcom theme songs ever. It's like, we finally got a piece of the pie. So we're introducing George into his first new sitcom, and then the first minute, the joke is like, stop eating pie, Wheezy. Like, I don't know, I felt like that had to be part of it. Like, they had to reference it. It could have been any food. It could have been like, here's a stack of pancakes, or here's 10 pizzas. I felt the pie was like a throwback to being like, it's George, guys. It's fun, right?
Here's some cheesesteaks.
It is Philly. He's right.
Yeah.
Well, these pies that you mentioned, that's when the two sisters walk in because like the whole thing is like he's trying to defend himself a little bit here. And then the two girls are about to walk in and he's like, oh, no, that's fine. We're good right now. And then they come in with all these pies for him, 4 different pies. So that doesn't, it looks bad in the moment because he's trying to defend himself against the deacon. And here you are with this onslaught of pies that seems to be like your daily snack.
He also tells him with an ultimatum he should lose 80 to 100 pounds. That is such an astronomically hard amount of weight to lose.
How much time did he give him?
It was a date that we wouldn't know in timeline wise. It was like by a certain mass, but we don't know when this is taking place. So we don't know.
He said he wanted to lose it by Easter, but we don't know when in the year they're currently at.
Now, I'm a man who's, I've plus minus a good amount of weight many times. I mean, you can lose 100 pounds. Like, I've done it. But, depend. If you're that big, he looks like a big dude. Like, tall, big dude, though.
Yeah, he's tall.
He's like a wrestler.
Yeah.
So if he goes on just even like an adequate, like a not even extreme diet at his height and size, he could probably lose 20 pounds a month. So
I will say too, though, if you like get, and we've all had dumb things we've done, right? Like you get in a position where you just like change one thing or like you stop being active for a few months, you can gain a lot of weight, which then you can lose back pretty quickly.
Sure. Well, as a man who's yo-yoed my whole life, it's the most fucking frustrating thing though when you see someone like they lost, I'm a big dude. I have to lose a lot of weight for it to look significant. But when someone like who's already like just a little chubby loses just that little vanity weight and they're down like 20, 30 pounds, look like a different human. You go, oh, what'd you do? It's like, oh, I just stopped drinking soda. It's like, fuck you. I have to starve myself for months and months on end. And you just stop drinking soda for a few months and you look like you have abs now. Fuck off.
I mean, that's just bullshit anyway. I think it's a math equation. Losing weight is a math equation. It is burning more calories than you're taking in. So when people say things like, I just quit drinking soda, and then like their cartoon pants fall down in the commercial, like that's not really what happens unless you're also working out and doing other, I think it's like a weird weight loss myth of being like, you could just stop drinking soda. Like you have to make the equation work.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but obviously there's other components.
I mean, here the deacon is telling the Reverend, maybe We can put you on a water diet or just wire your jaws shut for a few weeks. Like he's really getting extreme on this thing.
Also, what is a water diet? Like,
just water, I guess.
Just water.
I drink a ton of water, but like I think another myth of weight loss, right? Where it's like every time you're hungry, just drink some water. Like that doesn't work.
It doesn't
right?
hold
like,
that
your
long.
body has to eat stuff too, right?
Oh.
Like so.
Well, what about, like, don't people do, like, those weird cleanses where they drink, like, cayenne pepper water?
Sure.
And lemon water. It's lemon and cayenne pepper and
Maple syrup.
honey.
Maple syrup, yeah, basically it just makes you, but that's like the classic thing too, where like you lose a bunch of weight for that period of time. And then the second you're like, I want a burger, you get it all back. But that's more of a cleanse than a weight loss.
It's intentional diarrhea is all it is.
Yeah, that's cleaning out your colon.
And yeah, but you're also like severely dehydrating yourself.
Yeah, you have to like drink a ton of water when you're doing that stuff.
It's like, I mean, you lop off your arm and technically you're going to weigh less, right? It's like kind of the same thing.
Think of like boxers and UFC fighters, right? Before they go in to do that weigh-in, they don't drink any water for like a whole day.
Yeah, they wear the bag suits.
Yeah, and they wear bag suits, you sweat it out because the more, I mean, like think of this, right? Like, I don't know if you work out sometimes, right? Like I work out every morning. Sometimes I'll look at myself after and be like, I look great. And then I drink a bunch of water, come in the shower, and then I come back out and I'm like, that's exactly where I was before I started, right? Like, because it's just the differential.
Yeah, you always look at your best, like the second you get out of bed, just because of the amount of water your body expels when you sleep. So you're going to be at your leanest the second you get out of bed after a good night's sleep.
Oh, that's depressing. It's funny though, with some of those fighters, I mean, they'll weigh in 48 hours before the fight and they'll go up, some of them will go up like 20 pounds by the time they fight.
Like carbo load after, yeah. They'll be like, well, now it's chicken parm time.
This is way off topic and it doesn't really mean anything, but the UFC or the Gaming Commission will not allow them to hydrate intravenously for some reason, and I don't get why. Like, it's unhealthy to drop that much weight.
Right.
And I think the only excuse was, like, they don't want to incentivize, like, crazy weight loss just because they can get hooked up to an IV after and be fine.
Sure. It's also just still terrible for your heart to lose that much in such a short period of time, too. Right? Like, overall, that, like, is going to...
There's a lot of people who theorize against it. Like, the idea is that you gain all this weight back and then you fight at a heavier weight than your opponent, but because everyone does it, it kind of levels off.
Right, it evens the playing field.
So now everyone's just doing super unhealthy stuff, yeah. But to get back into this, this is when the Reverend's like, I've been a minister for over 30 years and I've never met anyone like you in my life. And he's just telling me he's a low down, unscrupulous, what was it? Reprobate?
Unscrupulous reprobate.
Okay. And he quits. He takes off. This is the last we see him. It's funny, actually. The actor who plays him, whose name is John Hancock, ends up coming back in season 5 for a couple episodes, but with a different character. So he does return later down the road, not as the Reverend we see today. And I kind of thought that this was a misstep. Like, I know the way he was cast, like the script was never meant for him to be a character, but I thought they had like a really good chemistry.
I think that eventually we see there has to be a love story blossoming, which I don't think needs to happen for every sitcom. I would have preferred a contentious Reverend Deacon relationship over he's the wholesome, handsome one who's going to obviously have a relationship with the daughter. Like, I think that was a misstep.
Oh, so Joe, fat people can't fall in love with the daughter?
Well, they could have found a way to keep him in the show in some other capacity, like even if he like joined the rival church down the street or whatever.
Oh, church
Also,
battles.
we don't know what Sydney looked like, and I'm pretty sure that daughter would have fallen in love with anybody.
Well, we'll get into it. Part of it was, I don't know if it's because this guy, in a way, kind of reminded me of James Avery, so I'm getting that Fresh Prince vibe of when the two of them would go back and forth on the show.
Vote for Philip Banks.
Which is funny because James Avery actually did a few episodes of Amen.
And we mentioned Sherman Hemsley, and I will say this too. Everybody on this cast did every TV show ever. And like every sitcom ever. And then all the shows that like I've loved from the 80s, every single person in this cast was in like a Miami Vice, a Hunter, and an A-Team. And that makes me so fucking happy. It's like,
how many were in
TV
Mantis?
was so much better. Dude, I dug so deep. I looked at every single person who was in the cast who even was like person number 3 in the choir. Is like one of them had to be in Mantis because this is 8 years out for Mantis. No, Everybody was in fucking Meteor Man with Robert Townsend, another great
Fantastic movie.
Great movie, but nobody was in Mantis. I thought if any show somebody was in Mantis, it would be like an all-black cast sitcom from within 10 years with older people. Nobody in this episode was in Mantis.
I think we're going about this all wrong. Instead of going from the shows into Mantis, we're going to have to go from Mantis out.
I've found and sent you guys shows that we could have did. I've sent you guys like 2 shows that we could have did with your Mantis test. But that's a story for another day. We get to the next scene and now it's choir practice. And we meet Lorenzo, who's the choir leader. He walks in. It's weird. It starts with like this close-up of his face. He's like, all right, I'm here. And it was something about it that was like really awkward. I don't know what it was, but it was this really weird delivery he had there.
It's an odd intro where you're like, they make him be full of himself, but they don't give him enough in this episode to really get that character.
Yeah, the character's not too fleshed out yet, but you're under the impression he's supposed to be like a character.
Is he like a famous character actor or something where like he'd be like winking to the audience like, hey, it's me? Like,
Just a handsome guy who's in a ton of TV shows like everybody else.
okay.
He's getting everyone all lined up like for the choir to begin. And he spots out this one kid who's like chewing gum. And the kid's like, I can chew gum and sing. And he goes, yeah, well, I can whistle and eat corn, but I don't do it in church. What?
I don't think he can eat corn and whistle.
Yeah, I will say, I've eaten corn plenty of times. Very hard to do, especially the Goldberg way of eating corn.
Oh, the long way.
The long way. Is there something about what he said that I don't understand? Is there some meaning behind that? Because I'm like, what the fuck is that?
I don't think so. I think he just picked a food. And
Pick the corn.
He picked a corn. Like, I want the spicy one from Trader Joe's that tastes like smoke. Wait, you never had the Trader Joe's spicy corn that tastes like smoke? It's so good.
I've bought their frozen Mexican corn.
That's the one, yeah. Put it in burritos.
What is it, street corn?
It's not like a lodi, though. It doesn't have like a cream element to it.
Yeah.
It just has like the smoky flavor like you grilled it.
Oh.
But put that in a burrito bowl? Yeah, buddy.
Respect the corn in the burrito. You don't see some places just straight up don't have the corn for the burrito. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
I'm always corn burrito.
I don't know if this is if the tangent is to go corn or if the tangent is to go Trader Joe's. But I'll tell you right before we recorded, I had the Trader Joe's jalapeno like and cream cheese wonton things. You just throw them in the air fryer for like 7 minutes, and they are fantastic.
I've never been let down by Trader Joe's.
For
like,
real.
Period.
They do everything pretty well.
The best thing they ever made, though, they stopped making. They used to make a 5-layer Mexican dip that was like beef, beans, cheese, cream cheese. It was like just the most amazing thing ever. And you like, it was in a tinfoil little like rectangle, and you put it in the toaster oven for like 10 minutes, and then you just dip chips into it.
It's so funny that Joe's stomach is as bad as it is, but he will eat gallons of cheese.
Cheese stops everything, baby.
Finds
Doesn't
you.
start anything. My whole butthole is half cheddar because I need to like have enough cheese to keep a reserve of blockage. It's like putting a cork in there.
Just don't eat Swiss because there's too many holes.
Right, yeah, can't trust the Swiss. Everything gets through.
Do they make butt plugs that look like cheese? If so, I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
I bet you it's Limburger because it's stinky.
Well, I don't know where to go from there.
Back to amen, folks.
Yeah. So now again, we're trying to get the choir together to start singing. And right before they go this time, this kid Marlon and his mom walk in. Marlon's like a high school basketball player, and he must be like locally famous.
Marvin.
It's Marvin. Huh.
Also, this is the only episode. That seems crazy to me. They
Really?
give so much to this character.
Oh, I hate that.
He goes off to college.
At the end of this, oh yeah, he gets to college, the college years, the worst version of Amen. Amen, the college years, but they're in Bible school. Actually, I would watch that show. That sounds amazing.
Well, anyways, yeah. So with Marvin, I'm under the impression that he's like some sort of a local.
It's your cousin, Marvin. Amen.
But like I think Marvin's the type where like he's so good at basketball that everyone in town probably knows that he's going to be something one day. So because everyone was pretty like excited when he walked in for choir practice.
I looked this up too because I mentioned he made 46 points in his game, and I like was trying to look up because I don't know a ton about basketball. I like playing basketball.
That's a lot.
I like watching
Yeah, it's a
basketball. But
lot.
that seems like a lot. But when I looked it up, it was like, I guess players now average something like 9 points a game per team if you did like the flat average. But they said that the basketball rules have changed so much since this show came out that this isn't like a good gauge anymore.
I would love to hear you explain basketball to people who watch basketball more, 'cause it's so interesting, your perspective of it.
I've been to a professional basketball game. I still at Miami Heat live once. I paid $12 for Miller Lite, and then I sat in the bleachers.
Also, were you looking up the NBA or were you looking up like high school?
NBA.
So the average score for a basketballer is usually if they
Oh, I typed in the like most nerdiest Google search ever. I was like, what does a basketball player average per game? But somebody had it where they're like,
a good player will average like in the mid 20s to early 30s points a night. Like that's kind of like their average. And then there's extremes where people have scored 80 points in a night, that's like rare. Like Kobe did that once where he was like in the 80s, and Wilt Chamberlain, famously got 100 points in a game before. But your average good player on a nightly basis usually will hit like in the low 20s to early 30s.
So a dude hitting 46 points a game should have like colleges crawling all over him.
Yes, especially when he's going like, you have the Deacon joking like, oh, well, anyone can have an off night. So yeah, apparently he's very good.
Right.
Yeah, and it's high school and you're going against other children, so there's no defense.
That's true too. I mean, you're playing against teams who I know it's based on varsities and things. You just keep going. I have no idea.
Hearing you explain that.
I have no idea about sports.
Right. That's why I asked what you looked up, if you looked up high school stats or
I looked
NBA.
up NBA because I figured that would be relevant. But when you mentioned that, I was like, well, children are
think
bad.
of it like this, right? Think of someone like LeBron James, who came straight out of high school.
I know him.
His rookie year, he was already one of the best in the league. The year before that, he was playing a bunch of high school kids, So, like, obviously your numbers are going to be pretty crazy when you're LeBron James, age 17, 18, playing high school kids, if you're that good the following year when you're playing the best players in the world.
What do your numbers change if you put on a wig and a dress and then you play like Grandmama?
Or Joanna Man.
Damn it.
Or Joanna Man. I'm going to go Grandma. Larry Johnson was his name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go Grandma because that's way funnier to me than Joanna Man. I think he was on the Charlotte Hornets.
So the Deacon saying to Marvin, like, oh, you must have all these colleges like crawling after you already, right? He's like, yeah, he's like, I had someone show up at my house today. We've been getting a lot of attention all of a sudden.
And in real time too, didn't they just change the laws too that you can pay college athletes?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get into that in a little bit too. That kind of comes up later. I want to talk about that a little bit more in depth later in the episode.
They changed merchandising. They can get merchandise.
They finally all get lined up to sing after all these other distractions, and they start singing this song. Something sounds off to Lorenzo. He's like, someone's flat. And then he asks one of the girls to start singing, and you get like her just singing a few lines of the song. And then he goes to another guy, and you have him singing a few lines to the song. And then you go to this guy in the back that he's never seen before. And apparently he's the one who's singing flat. Turns out he's the basketball recruiter who was at his house earlier in the day. So you would think, I just think it was funny that we had this like long scene all to reveal like, oh, it must be the one guy I don't know who's in the back.
Right. Yeah. You'd think they'd be like, who's that? Who's that dude?
Yeah. But I did think it was a little funny.
This whole scene just so the director could have his like friends show off their voices. They all got individual solos.
This is a casting thing though, but I get it too. Like if you're doing casting, you're like, I need someone who can fit into this age group, but also can sing really well and deliver a line. Like that's a hard thing to do, right? Like I can't act or sing. That'd be hard to find somebody who can do both and not be shitty about it.
Yeah, but I mean, they're professional actors, so it's not that crazy.
Well, you don't know that though, because if you can't find a professional actor, you have to find a professional singer who can then fake acting for a minute, right?
True.
So now that we know that this recruiters kind of snuck in, the Deacon goes to kick him out. He was like shoving him out the door, and now we get the two of them isolated in the hallway together. We get this like little exchange from him where he's like, listen, I'll do anything to get this kid on my team. And you see the Deacon kind of going like, and then giving him his card and going like, well, here, give me a call. We'll figure something out. And then he kicks him out.
I do like though, because I thought this is a good character trait of his where he is actually mad. He wants to kick this guy out because he's
disrupting like the church activity.
Yeah. So like you do get the piece of him where he's like, he does care about this place. He doesn't want this guy in here just for the money or the kid.
And then we flash forward to like, I don't know if it's the next day or so, but it's looking for a new reverend. And we have the deacon, the two sisters, and this other guy like Raleigh.
Best character on the show.
Who's like the brother there.
One thing I will mention too, this is where we start seeing that there is a scene transition where they show the board outside of the church for every scene to set up where they are and what time it is, which I think is like kind of a cool transition thing. So we know.
Oh, yeah.
This is like the board of directors at 3 p.m. or whatever.
I had no clue like a local church had a board of directors. Like it's run like a normal business.
I guess if you think about it, I mean, it's.
But I figured it was all just run by the like Catholic church or
big
whatever
church.
thing. Like big church. I didn't think like a local like small church would have a whole board of directors and all that.
Well, I mean, Methodists, I think, do. Independent churches do. Like Catholic churches don't, because obviously they're Catholic and they have a hierarchy.
There's a Methodist to their madness.
Eh.
See, I'm capable of making church jokes that aren't punching down. I'm a good person.
Yeah, because the church is Mount Pisgah African Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia. That's the...
I'm pretty sure one of those words you said will offend somebody, but yes, that's the one.
The Mount... I don't know how to pronounce this. Pisgah? Pisgah?
You realize no one else is going to jump in on this one. You realize you float on that one by yourself.
Pisgah.
Yeah, that's it. There you
That's
go.
how they say it. Praise Lord, said Pisgah. That's how they usually start all of their sermons.
Well, if it wasn't offensive before, it sure is now.
So, anyways, we have these four people that are all sitting. The board of directors are kind of like sitting like judges for a talent show. They have that like American Idol style where they're all just sitting along one side of a desk together. We're getting kind of the intro to everything. Like, oh, all right. So this is where we're gonna go over all the candidates. How many do we have? One. Well, let's start with him.
Is that where the judge is dyslexic and he says, that's a no for me, God?
He asks Raleigh, have you seen him preach before? He's like, mm-hmm. Like, how was he? Seen better, seen worse, seen much better, seen much worse, seen much better, and then he cuts him off.
I love this character.
Me too.
In real life, he was like a composer.
Oh.
But he started acting in like 1936, and he acted all the way up to his last movie is Being John Malkovich in 1999. Like, that's a wild career.
Yeah, he died at like 99 or something like that.
Did he ever become John Malkovich?
I don't think he becomes John Malkovich. I haven't seen the movie in a long time.
He never goes into the thing?
I've never seen that movie.
I think he becomes the John Malkovich who takes over the prison plane.
Gordo, what do you mean? We all watched that movie together.
We might have. I did watch that with people.
I mean, to be fair, we may have watched that together at some point. I wouldn't be able to say with 100% accuracy we didn't do that once.
I know 100% of the fact that Ferg and I have watched Back to the Future.
Okay, it was
When?
on while you were there, maybe, but you obviously didn't watch it.
Yeah, the osmosis didn't take on that one.
When did it go from we all watched it together to me and you watched it?
True.
Your silence is very damning here, Gordo.
We've watched it.
We get the first and only applicant for this job, and that's when we meet the new Reverend Gregory. He's getting like quizzed by the deacon, and he's asking him a few questions, asking him a little bit about his background. He's going over all his like school accolades, which were pretty nice. He had like a doctorate and all this stuff. And then the next question is, do you believe in God? He's like, yeah, I do. Like, all right. Have you ever been arrested? Yes, once. But it was for picketing against racism outside of the South African embassy. So he's like, all right, well, you paid your debt to society.
They hammer the South African stuff a couple times in this episode, which really lets you know, where it is in time. And like, good, right? Like, apartheid was a terrible thing, so it's good they're doing it. But I appreciate that the writers were like, we can make jokes about this, right? Like, this is a terrible fucking thing.
You have one of the sisters asking if he's single. And when he says that he does, she's like, well, I'm ready to vote. And that's when we get the deacon's daughter, Thelma, and she like opens the door and she's kind of giving him like the psst, psst, because she wants him to come out and meet her in the hallway. And Thelma's played by Anna Maria Horsford, who she's been in a million things. I would say most famously, this has been one of those things that have actually bothered me when we recorded the episode that I didn't bring it up. She was like famous for being, well, to me, for being Dee in the Wayans Brothers. Yep. And she was in like 80 episodes of that show. She wasn't in the pilot. I didn't bring her up at all in that episode. That was one of those things that I forgot how different that show felt after the pilot. And the fact that like her presence in that show was so big. It's been bothering me that I never brought her up in that episode. So I'm getting it off my chest now, I guess.
I want to get something off my chest too, because what is it with Joe and picking these shows? Because she's playing Sherman Hemsley's daughter. She is 9 years and change younger than him, and it's so weird looking.
At least she's not older than him, like in Mama's
But do you know who
Family.
she is, though? That I know Ferg will appreciate this. She's Denise's mom in The Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps.
Yes.
So I forget her last name in it, but she's Denise Clump's mom. And Nutty Professor 2 is one of the funniest movies that's ever been created. And
Wet noodle
thank you
cletus.
for your service. Wet noodle cletus. So fucking good. I won't tell.
At least, yeah, it's only like a 10-year age gap. But Sherman Hemsley has like an older look to him because of his like skullet mustache. So that'll like age him a little bit. Whereas like Mama's Family, where you're to believe that Vicki Lawrence was the mother of Betty White, was like a little extreme.
I was the only one who saw the discrepancy here. Like when I found out that they were father-daughter, I was like, what the fuck? It doesn't feel right at all.
It wasn't like glaring to me.
No, it wasn't to me either. But I think that's because the quality wasn't that good.
I was just going to say, I'm not going to lie. I've seen this show before, and I remember that you find out later on that Sherman Hemsley is a widow. But when she knocks on the door and he's like, oh, hold on. I thought that was his wife because the quality of the screen was so bad. I couldn't tell what age they were. And I was like, oh, maybe we meet his wife early and she dies.
That could be it. Yeah. Cause this quality, like, I don't even know what her face necessarily looks like.
I don't either. Yeah. I mean, there's certain parts, like the only time you really see her later is when it's like a full body, because she has like a lot of physical comedy later in the episode. And you're like, you can kind of gauge her better then.
It's also Sherman Hemsley's like just a smaller person. So like, it's tough to obviously like, match him up the right way. But the fact that she is like twice his size almost also makes it seem a little weird.
Because he's short and slight and she's like normal size.
Maybe the mother's a real big woman, and that's why he hates fat people so much, because diabetes took her.
Maybe she was a clump.
She was a clump. There you go.
Maybe it was Grandma Clump.
He heads out to the hallway to talk to his daughter, and she's just like sobbing. So he's like, all right, let me know what's going on, because he's like, this has to be quick though, because I have to go back in there. It's important. And she starts telling a story about this dude, like Sydney, and he drove by, honked at her, announced that he got married, and then drove off with like the cans and stuff on the back of his car. And now she's crying because she was apparently in love with this guy, and now he's married. But I was very like, was she dating this guy?
Or was it a crush? I was the same boat as you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he could have been like, hey, can you leave me alone finally? Because I'm married. Here are the cans. We're going.
Because it just seems like a weird thing if you were like secretly, if she was like your side girl or something, and be like, beep, beep, look, I'm married, bye. Like that doesn't make any sense.
But then he says my daughter got dumped, so maybe they were dating, and that's how he broke it off. He married someone else. He
does say dump, but she says she's been jolted. She says she's been jilted 20 times in 10 years. So she's averaging a new boyfriend twice a year. So it's obviously that she's a little maybe clingy and not getting commitment, right? In 20 in 10 years, it's a lot. That's not dating. Like, it's a different world now. I don't know what's going on anymore, but I feel like it's weird. It's a lot of people, it seems like.
Could just be hyperbole.
Yeah, I don't know. I just found that whole exchange a little odd. I couldn't quite gauge the situation at all, because she's like sobbing over it. But
well, I mean, can you imagine somebody you have a crush on and just coming up being like, beep, beep, motherfucker, I'm married? Like, come on.
Cans would be a real insult added to it. Yeah, like beep, beep, and then you hear like the as they drive away. Like,
you see just married written on there. Like,
I'd like to think the cans were also full like Michael Scott, so they were exploding soda at her as he pulled away.
Yeah.
And then he has to leave her and head back inside, and they're going on a little bit more, and he's telling the candidate, you know, at the end of the day, everything goes through me, like I have like final say in everything. He's like, well, hold on a minute. Like, I don't know if I'm entirely cool with that. Like, you know, I live kind of by like a moral code, you know, not so much like being ruled over by like your decisions here.
So this sets up the obvious dynamic, right? We see where it's going to be he is one way, this guy's another way. I think it's weird that we get the daughter stuff later on, because I think the first episode should just be this, and the second episode should be the daughter meeting him. Personally, that's how I would have done it. This should be a fight between the two of them. But I do like that we're 5 minutes in and we set up like the two hard-headed guys going against each other.
You don't want to say that Sherman Hemsley's character is corrupt, but he's less by the book. His moral compass isn't the number one overriding factor in all things. And we see this with that whole recruiter earlier with the give me your card and stuff like that, where this reverend who's trying to come in is very, like, as pure as it can get, right? Like, he's very, you know, it's either right or it's wrong. There's not much gray area. Do the right thing.
He's a little too pure for my liking. He's a little middle ground.
Or he's a reverend, like he should be.
Should be, yes, but usually in TV and stuff, you see those people usually have like a streak of there's something that makes them not like an anti-hero, but like something that makes them a little wishy-washy too.
I think that he's a little much with the like, no, it's completely wrong. There's no, it's wrong, but I understand why you feel this way. There's none of that. It's just, this is wrong. Like, no.
Although interviewing for a job is hard in general. Like interviewing for a job is a nightmare, right? We've all done a million of them. Interviewing for a job where you're like, who's your best reference? You're like, God. Must be such a weird fucking thing to be like, well, God thinks I'm pretty good at it. You got a problem with God? Like, how do you combat that?
I'm going to use that.
From God.
Who's your reference? God.
Yeah, let us know how that goes.
If you're applying for a job that's not in a church, I think they'd be like, next applicant, please.
Imagine if he was applying for a job at a church and they're like, ooh, that's a good one.
He hasn't done that in a while, actually. It's really impressive.
So Deacon asked the Reverend to step out for a minute so the four of them can deliberate a little bit. And he's like, where does he get off coming in here with that holier than thou attitude? And one of the sisters like, he does not have a holier than thou attitude. He's just a holier than you attitude.
It's the funniest line in the show, I think.
I think it's a very good line, yeah.
I said we dumped this jailbird. I like that he's like, now that he's like trying to like find flaws in him. Now, even though he got arrested for doing something inherently good, he's like, this guy went to jail. We can't have him in here.
I also miss the term jailbird. I feel like that was a thing that's been sort of routed out of our cultural lexicon. It's just a funny term to use. Like in Back to the Future, when it's Uncle Jailbird Joey. Gordo, you remember that scene in Back to the Future, right?
Yes, I do.
Gordo, when do you actually see him?
You know, when you see him, when he comes on the screen.
Oh, not when he's in his playpen in the third movie?
Yeah, when he's on the screen.
He loves that Milton Berle episode.
He does. It's crazy. I couldn't believe it.
Well, anyways, they're all going back and forth about this. The two sisters very much want to hire this guy. Deacon doesn't. They're kind of going over some stuff. They're like, look at the last 5 ministers that you've hired and like, look where it's getting us. Where it's like when you look to the beginning of the episode when he's blaming the Reverend for like attendance being down and for collections being down. Maybe it's just the way the deacon's been running this place lately. Like maybe that's the real problem.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they're going through like 5 guys in a short time span. Maybe he just keeps deflecting because he doesn't want to accept that he's the reason things are going down.
But also, that's a weird thing for insubordinates to say to their boss. Be like, I don't know, maybe you just suck at being the boss. Like that, he could easily just be like, okay, you're both fucking fired then. Like that's a weird limit to push.
But they're also on the board of directors in this capacity.
I guess that's true. And they should also technically be turning the other cheek.
So now they're all voting. 2 girls say yes. He says no. That leaves Raleigh as the final vote. A tie means no because it has to be a majority win. So he's asking him like, all right, Raleigh, how do you feel? And he's like, not like reacting. And it's like, I mean, it's the comedy that he's so old.
Am I the only one that thought he was dead?
Yeah.
And that was going to be the joke that they outvote him because Raleigh died?
That would have been a little too dark, I think.
But he also made it for like the whole 180 episodes of the show. So I'm glad he isn't dead in this episode.
I think about that all the time with shows like when you hire like old people to be like obviously things can happen to anybody, but when you have like an older person that's like in their 80s in your cast, like that's risky. You never know what's going to happen.
Well, that's why Mama's Family went the other way.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Modern Family at the end, like in the middle of Modern Family, made Fred Willard Phil's dad, and then they have to do an episode where it's like Phil's dad died, and it's so depressing because it's the funeral you'd never want to see.
Yeah, because it's like half real because the actor did die. You know what I mean? So it's
and it's an actor everybody knows too. It's not like just like a random person.
So now you have like cast members who are legit sad because of the actual passing of the real person.
Right.
Ultimately, in this case, Raleigh does decide, yes, I'm voting him in.
This is my favorite part.
So they send the deacon outside and let him know. They tell him like, hey, congratulations, welcome to First Community Church. He's like, the other three didn't want you, but I talked them into it.
I like when Raleigh just keeps going, you tell him. Go tell him.
Right before he walks out, yeah. Tell him. Tell him. Tell him.
I also love anybody who like can steadily clean their glasses like that and be serious, because most of us on this call wear glasses. And when you take your glasses off to clean them, you just see like nothing. It just blurs. But anybody's ever serious?
Yeah, last week was a nightmare because of that. I had to keep cleaning mine because it was 1,000,000 degrees recording and they kept fogging.
Unlike you blind boys, I just have astigmatism.
Yeah, but you're deaf.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. So,
Ferg just went for the gut punch right away. He's like, oh yeah?
That was so fucking mean.
I don't even have a retort to that.
You should just come with, huh?
Come again?
Huh?
Well, you don't have a retort because you don't have that same killer instinct to just gut punch somebody and go below the waist there. So now we get to the next scene, and it's like this short time jump because now we're seeing the Reverend's already like in place there. He's a new pastor. We have a knock on the door from Mrs. Russell and Marvin. And this is where like Mrs. Russell wants her son to like confess to the Reverend, like what's going on in the situation. And we find out that he was offered $20,000 to be recruited by that school. So now we know like the deal that was made by the deacon. I like that whenever he says $20,000, he like maniacally laughs. He can't help himself.
I mean, like, I was watching this being like, if someone was like, you can have $20,000, I would maniacally laugh. And then you do the inflation calculator and it's like closer to $55,000. And you're like, I would sell out for $55,000 so quickly.
Yeah. Whenever he laughs, though, his mom like dope slaps him in the head, which felt real to me. Like, I like that. That's, I don't know. I mean, kids probably not getting slapped in the head these days as much, but we certainly did.
This, though, and I don't have a lot of things I don't like about this episode. I don't like that we get Marvin laughing and his mom hitting him in the head like 4 different times for characters who don't continue through the show. Like, this should be a thing that every few episodes happens.
But you don't know that they don't continue through the show.
That's true. In this moment, you don't know that.
In this moment, I don't. Yeah. So I like it because I'm like, oh, this will be funny. They'll be at church. He'll say something dumb and start laughing in the pew, and she'll hit him. And like, that's a good gag.
Pew.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt about the Reverend at the top of the episode, the big one. Because I'm like, oh, they have a nice dynamic. And you go, oh, yeah. And then he's gone. So they're talking, and Reverend Gregory is like, you can't take that money. You know, and he's like, well, the deacon already has the check for me. The Reverend's like, well, maybe if I talk to the deacon, I can get you out of this. Like, get him out of what? Like, he's not like in trouble. He just was offered money. Like, I know that the morality thing here, but like,
I think it's technically illegal, though.
At this point, yeah.
Yeah.
So the movie Blue Chip is all about that. The one with what's
Yeah.
it?
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. Yeah, it's Nick Nolte. Don't take the money.
Buys him a tractor.
But so again, I understand, and I know it's wrong, and we'll talk more about it in a little bit. But in this moment, the way that the Reverend's reacting, I get it's wrong, and he's trying to tell him not to do it. But he's acting like this single moment is going to ruin your life. Like he's talking about it as if he found out that this kid was doing drugs or joined a gang or did something that's like
This is kind
really
of the
harmful.
linchpin for me on like where this like tilted in the
Yeah,
wrong
this
direction. I
lost
was like,
me.
Yeah.
oh, this is just like cheesy garbage now.
It gets a little too morality.
So my thing is, we're learning, we talked about this earlier, the dynamic of the show is going to be the Reverend versus the Deacon and where they stand on issues and like having altered morality on certain issues. That's fine. This is the example for episode 1. I did not think was a great example. This kid got money for, to play basketball, especially, and again, we'll talk about it in a minute. When you hear the Deacon, like his side of the story, there's like logic behind his theory. You know what I mean? It's not like this evil thing. You know what I mean? So he still feels like he's like doing good in a way.
Yeah, and this Reverend's meeting them for the first time. It's like he don't know their situation or anything, where the Deacon knows them well, knows this is life-changing money for them, and you never know. He gets recruited there, gets the money. What if he tears his ACL first day of the thing, never plays again?
So I understand. So that I just thought this wasn't the best example because it's like such a gray area for most people where they would sit on this argument that it didn't seem like an overwhelmingly, like if we found out like, oh, he's like low on money and wants to go to basketball camp and can't afford it, so he's been selling drugs. Like that's a more clear cut like argument. You know what I mean? Like,
agreed. They should have like picked a side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was too gray of a situation.
I'll say too, it's a little later in the episode, but when he's trying to convince him not to do it, he's like, I can help. Trust me. And you're like, oh, is he like an assistant coach at some college or something? And then you never find out. And you're like, you just trusted this guy.
But he doesn't need his help. He's getting heavily recruited by all these people. All he's going to do is go to any college he wants and not take money. Like,
as we discussed, 46 points is a very good amount of points.
This scene's concluding still with the mother saying like, hey, if you want to make me happy, like, can you please just talk to the Reverend and at least do that for me? Can you just talk to him? And he's like, all right, I'll talk to him, but like, he's not going to change my mind. And, that scene fades out. And next thing we know,
the way that scene ended, though, he stands up in front of him and it looked like he beat the shit out of him off screen.
I know.
It just cuts out and then they're back at
well, you're looking at from the Reverend's back, like as he's looking off to him as the door shuts.
This also felt too like this was a scene where there was going to be a continued storyline with a catchphrase because she's like, hug me, boy. We're like, oh, hug me, boy is going to be like their thing they play out, but it's not.
Yeah, the mom actually, the more she got to talk and stuff like that, she had like good energy and stuff too. It's, I guess they just, it wasn't written for them to be permanent characters, but they happened to recruit good actors. So all these people, they're like, oh, I wish they were in more. Like,
yeah, but if it's the plot of the show that it's a local church and she's a local, she should be around all the time. She shouldn't have been a throwaway character.
Yeah, in theory, you would think, yeah, for these characters, for sure. We cut to later on, and now it's, the Deacon walking into his house. And Thelma's standing in the living room, sad in her bathrobe with like curlers in her hair. And he's like, Thelma, I'm home. What's for dinner? Your guess is as good as mine. He's saying, well, I know you're sad about Sydney, so I bought you this gift to cheer you up. And he hands her like this big wrapped present. She opens it, and it's just a briefcase. And she's like, I don't even have a job. Like, this is like...
Why did he do this? I don't get this.
This was the Homer bowling ball of
this
this
is
episode.
a very obviously
First
a
thing I
gift
thought
for
of
me.
too.
So the thing was, especially when she points out that his initials are on it, so it was like never really intended to be a gift for her. So
I will say to Ferg's point though, I feel like somebody saw this in the writing staff. Like, I don't know if it was like Conan or somebody, and they were like, oh, we're going to use this for the Life on the Fast Lane episode of The Simpsons with the Homer bowling ball, because the initials thing too, you're like, this is clearly the same plot point.
I don't know if, like in this case, from his perspective, like if he got her a shitty gift, but he didn't realize it was shitty, like that makes more sense. To get something that's clearly not actually for her just makes him look like a dick.
He had it gift wrapped too.
Yeah.
It's like, what was the point of this? Like, also,
It's an extra cost.
earlier in the day, she just told you how miserable she was because somebody dumped her and then like got married her in her face. And then you're like, oh, I'm gonna go get myself a gift, get it wrapped, lie, say it's for her, give it to her, watch her realize it's not actually for her. It's just like, this guy's such a piece of garbage, like, and in no way redeems himself at any point. And to be the main character of like this wholesome, like, church-going show, I get he's probably kind of like the antagonist, right? Like, they're always going to be working against him. But it's just like, he's such a shitty person, and I can't see past, like, I don't know. It really bugs me what a dick he is.
I disagree with the no redeeming thing because he even brings up that he got them that deal. He goes, this is going to be life-changing for them. And
Yeah, he says that like right in this moment too.
But he's trying to change their lives by doing the wrong thing.
but it's what he thinks is right.
I understand that, right? He's taking a bribe and potentially jeopardizing this kid's future just to get him a few bucks.
He's not potentially jeopardizing his future. He's jeopardizing his moral future. Like, he's not going to get in trouble for this.
Ostensibly, if they find out he took a bribe, he's not going to be able to get into a college.
The recruiter's going and get in trouble.
Also, they would have never written a check because that's a paper trail. It would have been
Sure.
Right, yeah.
it would have been cash.
But again, like Ferg said, I mean, he says like, hey, I did something terrific for that family. And he's saying like, I really stuck it to that college guy who we're seeing the college guy as being like a negative character. He's being a creep. He's following this kid around. He's going to his house. He's following him at church. So like, again, in the deacon's brain, fuck this guy. This guy's a weirdo. I'm going to take all this money from him and then hook up this kid who's like a good kid who goes to my church.
And his mother, and he wants nothing in return. He doesn't say like, I got a 10% cut of it.
So again, it's like wrong thing, but the motives are in the right place. Now, as like a church goer and like man of God, he should probably be able to identify that, but he doesn't. but his brain is kind of in the right place.
Yeah, to him, the ends justify the means.
Well, it's like stealing food. You know what I mean? Like if you're hungry. The gray area there.
I mean, there's a lot of gray areas. I will say, though, when you base your whole thing on, as long as you say you're sorry, we're okay, it also gives you a license to do a lot of stuff.
He should have signed the check and then went, can I go to confession?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, every time you hear about a serial killer, it's like, well, on their deathbed, after they killed 17 people, they were like, I found God, I'm forgiven now. And they're like, into the bosom you go. You're like, I think there should be a fucking loophole here, man.
You're just going to go into the arches and see the Buddy Christ.
The Golden Arches?
Or Alanis Morissette. Oh, have you guys not seen that movie?
We've all seen Dogma. I think we mentioned it in an episode like 2 weeks ago with the falling from the sky thing.
I have dogma figures like 10 feet from where I'm sitting.
I think, too, finally they wrestled the grip of control away from Dogma from, like, whatever entity now holds the Weinstein Company, and they can finally re-release it.
I think it was Matt Damon talking about that recently, wasn't he?
Yeah, so they can finally do, like, a Blu-ray of it and, like, release it in theaters, which I'm happy with. That's a great fucking movie.
I don't remember the last time I watched that one. I think I've watched them all recently. I don't think I watched Dogma since we were in high school.
It's been a while, yeah.
I believe I have the DVD. Only I can find a DVD player.
Maybe I'll pop that on later. Got to be on something, right?
No, it wasn't. That was the issue.
Oh, damn.
Patreon side style of, just like a Kevin Smith night, I think would be a good discussion.
I one time played a show in the lesbian bar that...
Chasing Amy.
From Chasing Amy. Yeah.
As they're talking, doorbell rings. And the deacon's like, oh, that must be Marvin. He's coming to get his check. So he goes to open the door. Thelma's like right behind going like through the closet. And then he hears, oh. And then she hears him go, oh, Marvin. Oh, Reverend, I didn't know you were coming. And then when she knows that the Reverend's also there, she jumps in the closet to hide because she's in her bathrobe with curlers in her hair and stuff like that.
I love this, and it makes Sherman Hemsley such a shithead when he knocks on the door and is like, come out of here, the Reverend's here. It's like, you fucking asshole.
Again, it's like, I don't think that's being a shit. I think in that moment, he innocently just does not understand why that would be problematic. He's just an aloof father.
And keep in mind, he hates this guy, and he doesn't want his daughter ending up with him. So
True as well, yeah.
I guess perhaps there then.
Even though he's got 3 degrees and he works with them, I mean, he seems like a good candidate for...
Works for him.
When the door opens too, and she's just like standing there almost trapped, like she has that, like, she looks so angry.
Again, I couldn't tell her facial features here because the version was so bad, but I was like, I think she's unhappy in this scene.
It was kind of another weird thing too, because she's like, oh, nobody told me you were stopping by. I'm going to have to go now. I need, they were like holding hands in the moment. It's like, I'm going to need my hands to close my robe. And then like she like closes up and like heads upstairs, like kicks the door shut like in almost like this like flirty way. So I'm like, I don't really know what she's going for in this particular moment. It was just like just an odd exchange.
He was pointing out that her bosoms were out. I was hoping he'd take a look down.
And then she was doing donkey kicks to close the door, which makes you have a tight bum.
There you go.
What?
Mystery solved.
I guess I didn't pick up on all that overt sexuality in that moment. Yeah.
Donkey kicks is a workout technique where you go onto a plank and then you slowly kick your leg back and then put your knee up to your chest and you do that on each leg and it makes your bum tight.
Do you do that to tighten your bum?
I do on butt and leg day. Yeah.
Yo, what's the tightest butt you've never noticed?
You can bounce a quarter off it.
Smells like cheese though.
Yeah, it's cheesy as shit, but it's tight. Yeah.
But it's because of the butt plug.
Yeah. I have like no butt. I don't think that the exercises are working, but someday.
Because it's trapped in skin tight jeans all the time.
But I have really fat toes. This has been pushing it downwards. I have big blobby feet. I've just been pushing everything down.
You have big feet because your butt went down there.
I have like clown shoes when I walk.
It'd be funny if his feet made fart sounds.
Well, that's like so. Basically, what happened with your butt is it's like the cultures that do like binding. Only you did it with tight pants, and you binded your butt to stay small.
You know the funny thing? This is so fucking dumb, but I started wearing like skin tight pants when we were in 7th grade. So what are you in 7th grade? 12?
Yeah.
22, 32. That's 26 years. There are like parts of my legs where the leg hair is just gone and will never come back because it's like where the seams of pants have been for so long, so tight that like hair couldn't grow there. And like to this day, like if I go swimming with you, I wear shorts, you'd be like, why are there these giant weird cylindrical patches? It's because that's where the seams were. I've always been for almost over a quarter of a century. My body is a nightmare for a number of reasons.
The real awkward spot is the gap in his pubes where the zipper for his pants are. It looks like the top of the singer of Alien Ant Farm's head.
Like the reverse landing strip.
Oh, did you say Alien Ant Farm? Oh, I made a lot of money from that band. I bought a lot of boys at that. Casper, do not do that. Sorry, guys. He shows up sometimes.
That song is actually used for the Tough Enough 1 soundtrack.
Oh, you talking about tough boys in a ring?
That's why there was the Alien Ant Farm version of Smooth Criminal. That's why there's like wrestling rings and stuff because it's for Tough Enough.
The boys I like are smooth and I'm a criminal. Casper, I know that was a layup, but you got to calm down for a while.
Oh, the Maven theme was way better.
Turns out he hates that song.
Yeah, I watched the interview with Chris Van Vliet.
Well, it's okay though. He made his whole life better by being such a great wrestler and doing so many good things in the business.
He got to drop kick the Undertaker, all right? Have you ever kicked the Undertaker?
There's no crossover for Amen in Tough Enough Season 1. I can guarantee that. We can't do this for too long. There's not many people thinking like, oh my God, yeah, Maven. Like it's just not there.
Well, that's okay because there had to be a fandom for Amen. I think we're all set.
We'll find out.
I'm right here. I'm right fucking here.
So now that Marvin, the Reverend, and the Deacon are all alone downstairs, it starts with, hey, Marvin can't take this payoff money to play college basketball. And the Deacon's like, what? Did you tell him how much you were getting? He's like, yeah, $20,000. He
starts laughing again.
Starts laughing again.
I will say, though, for anybody who is like, Deacon's not a good person, this whole rant, I think, is so spot on.
This is what I wanted to hold on.
And this is 25 years ago or 30 years ago.
Because the Reverend's saying, like, it's against the rules. He's like, yeah, of course it's against the rules. Because who makes the rules? The same people that are going to use him and fill up their stadiums. The same people that are going to make millions and millions of dollars off their TV contracts. The same people who get all the kids to play for free and then turn right around and invest the profits and make a gold mine in stocks in South Africa. And he's right.
He is right in this. I'll give him that. Yeah.
1,000% right.
And that's why I think that this was a terrible topic for episode 1, because you can't have this dynamic between the two of almost like, it's not good versus evil, because at the end of the day, like the Deacon is also like a churchgoer and stuff too. Like he's not supposed to be like corrupt and evil.
Yeah, but he's breaking a rule. He's not breaking God's rule. There's no thou shalt not take money from college.
Right.
Yeah, from shitheads in college who do racist things.
Yeah, this whole rant he has, like, just makes it super conflicting for any viewer because he has nothing but valid points.
I'm Team Deacon all the way.
See, this is where I thought that the Reverend, who maybe he was getting one side of the story from the mother, and this would be the turnaround moment where he was like, oh, Deacon, you're right, and this isn't so bad. But then he goes on this other rant that I was like, what the fuck?
I remember watching there was the documentary, I think ESPN put it out on the Fab Five, the Michigan team from the 90s. And like, they were talking about like how, there were the guys who would like give these dudes money and like, eventually, it was caught and people got in trouble for it. But, they were getting payoffs from these guys, but they couldn't work. You make no money. Like when you play like high level like this, it's not like they can get a job working in the cafeteria. So like you can't work and then you're not getting paid to play the sport. And then you walk by and I remember one of them saying, I walk by the window and my jersey is in the window of the store, like my number, and they're making money off of me playing the sport, but I can't afford pizza. It's like, so I get the situation here.
Yeah, they just think that the free college education is enough of a payment. When I think the NCAA, gets like over $1 billion or something stupid.
Yeah, the amount of money they make on Final Four and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's
March
crazy.
Madness. It's
so
crazy.
like, I get it. Now, I will say in this particular case, though, we have Marvin's mother who doesn't want the money. So whatever situation they're in, we don't know, but we know it's not so bad that the mother, needs this money.
Yeah, we also never like established poverty here, right? Like,
yeah,
but it doesn't have to be poverty. If someone said,
Well, that's what I'm saying. The mother doesn't want the money, so they're not that desperate.
none of us are in poverty. If someone said, would you like $55,000 to play a game? You'd be like,
sure.
Okay, why would I say no to that? You know what I mean? Like, doesn't have to be poverty. $55,000 is a life-changing amount of money.
Also, they could be poor, but she's a church-going lady,
She's proud. Proud? Freddie got fingered deep cut right there for a cut. I only see one LeBaron, Fergie.
I like when they're going and they're both kind of talking to Marvin about this, and Marvin gives like that kind of like side look. And then when the deacon turns to the Reverend, he's like, no, you think he looked at this right? And he like mimics the look. He's like, but he didn't. He meant to do it like this. And he like makes like a wincing face instead. Like it's a visual, so it's really tough to explain it. But when he mimics him, that was my first laugh of the episode. Was Sherman Hemsley like mimicking the sigh and like what he meant to do. Like, I thought that was really funny.
It was not my first laugh, but it was definitely my biggest laugh because it lets him be him. He's like, as we said earlier, he's such a physical comedian that you can kind of just let him go and he can just make faces and make you laugh.
And now we're getting like that other dialogue now on the reverse side. So the point counterpoint, now we have the Reverend kind of going on this big speech. He's basically just talking about like, no, you're better than this. You're not dumb. I know that. Like, you should tear up this check. Like, prove that there's like a decent world out there where people don't have to lie and cheat and misuse money. And like, he's like, you're too young to sell out. And, your mother believes that, in a kind world. And he's going on and like really getting in this kid's head. And the audience like applauds. And I mean, I get this moral dilemma here, but the way he's talking about it again, I just think it was like, he was talking about this issue like it was a more serious issue.
Joe, does anybody know what the median income was in 1986 or whatever this show came out?
I'm sure we can look that up, yeah.
24,900.
What is it?
24,900 was the median household income.
A year's salary.
2 years, almost 2 years.
No, it's less than a year.
No, 1 year. That's terrible math.
And keep in mind, Nick said household salary.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was equating it to nowadays. Sorry, my bad.
I mean, households in 86 were more single income anyway.
Yeah, usually it was one person's income.
So my point is that he's making roundabouts a year's salary. Like, it's not drugs. It's not like murder. It's not, I don't know.
The problem is it's illegal, and that's where the Reverend is having an issue with it.
Right, it's a morality thing. It's
not a big deal, really. Like, I think, like, if we're all being completely honest, we would probably do the same thing in the situation.
So is it immoral for him to take a paycheck being
a man of God?
But it's not illegal. It's not against the rules.
But I don't think this is a legality thing. I think it's a morality thing.
Yeah,
it was illegal to do that stuff in college sports. So
I agree. I just don't think that's the Reverend's issue. I think the morality of it is his issue, not the legality.
Because he says selling out is what he says to him.
Yeah. Thou shalt not sell out. I believe that's one of the 10 commandments that got dropped by Mel Brooks when he had 15 commandments. We just didn't get to see that
15
one.
commandments, 10 commandments.
Great movie.
Funny thing about that movie is I got it for Christmas about 5 times because my mom would find it in the Walmart $2 bin.
Yep.
Not know what I had and give me the same DVD every year.
I definitely had like 3 copies of Blazing Saddles for the same reason, yeah. And Death Wish 2. Weirdly.
And
I don't know why Death Wish 2 was the one.
Spies Like Us.
Oh, Spies Like Us is so fucking underrated and so great.
Marvin's looking at this check. He's heard both people's sides, and he looks like he's just about to sign it, and then stops himself and rips it up. And you get like the applaud from the audience. And I think there's like one person you could like audibly hear like go like, "All right."
I don't think I'd be like, oh, come on, man. So much money.
I'd like to know if his dad's in the picture though, because the mom's against it, but this dad who's working all year long would probably be pretty angry. You tore up how much money?
Now you have the Deacon going, "I should have got it in cash. Nobody rips up cash."
That's a great Sherman Hemsley line too, though.
Yeah.
He says it with such disdain.
And this is like what I don't understand is now Marvin's like, I'm sorry, Deacon. I know you were thinking, what was best for me, but I better go home now and start looking for another college to go to." And that's when the Reverend's like, as you said before, like, "Oh, stop by the church tomorrow. I can help. I really can." And I'm thinking, wait, so this school that was willing to give him $20,000 to go there won't let him go for free? Like,
Yeah, right?
that's
Yeah.
not off the table. Hey, I'm not going to take that money. I'd still like to play here, though. That's
If
fine.
you still just want to pay my a scholarship, that's fine. I'll still come here. I'll just have to work in the cafeteria.
Why is a scholarship okay? You go to the school, but you can't take the money.
Those are different things, though. I get it.
I know the law, but it's the same idea. You're being paid. You're going to this prestigious school for free. That's payment, but not directly.
I agree, especially with how expensive college is now.
But at the end of the day, the thought that this school won't want him now because he's not taking their money
Doesn't make sense.
is insane. It makes no sense.
I'm sure they'll be elated that they get to keep what would equal 55,000.
Yeah, hey guys, keep the money, but I'm still going to play here.
Yeah, the scout guy would have pocketed the 20 grand and gone to Tahiti for a week. Like, that wouldn't have been like, oh, we put it back in the coffers. Now we can buy another player. Like, that would have been divided up amongst so many people in such a corruption scandal.
See, I was waiting for when they left the Deacon to glue the check back together.
That would have been a great scene. And then he takes that money and he buys a dry cleaning business.
Marvin leaves. Deacon say to the Reverend, "You took money out of that kid's pocket. How do you sleep at night?" So again, it aids into this idea where like he was very convinced he was doing the right thing by getting him that money.
Yeah, he's not being a bad person.
Yeah, he was a shepherd looking out for his flock. Keep things biblical.
Deacon saying to him, "It's only been one day, but I'm afraid it's going to be impossible for us to work together." He's like, "Oh, you're quitting?" He's like, "No, I think you should quit." And the crowd's like, "Ooh."
And fuck you.
Hey,
You're fired.
Fuck you, Reverend.
Right?
Yeah, go fuck yourself. How dare you?
You work for me, bitch.
It's your first day on the job and you're like, I think you should leave this place that like your dad left to you that you've been running for 30 years. I don't think so. I would have been like, okay, cool. That makes sense. You are fired now. Bye. Pack your fucking bags.
Then tape the check back together.
Then tape the check back together. And then donate it to a charity that he wouldn't like PETA.
Hey, let's get something straight. I was born in that church and I'm going to die in that church. And that's the only way anyone's going to get me out. And the Reverend's like, "Oh, so I guess I'll see you at Bible class tonight?" He's like, "Yeah, you bet you'll see me at Bible class tonight." And then you just have him mouth to himself like, "Bible class? Like what?" Which is another good, like Sherman Hemsley, like really nailed it with that.
I didn't get that.
He's saying, "Yeah, of course I'll be there." He had no intention of being there. Now he's like, "Oh, I just signed up for Bible class."
Yeah, like he's holier than thou, but he doesn't do that stuff. I will say this though, and I'm not saying this from any weird place. A bunch of us went through like CCD. We've all done this stuff. Does anybody want to go to Bible class? Even if you were like, I am super religious, I love God. Bible class? It's one book. You can only go to that class so often. Tom Clancy class makes a lot of sense. Jay, who's the woman that your mom's loves reading that she had like 10? Is it Steele?
No, Nora Roberts, was it?
Nora Roberts, yeah. Where your mom would have a book by Nora Roberts every week, and it would be a different book. And you go to the grocery store, and there's 40 Nora Roberts books. Yeah, it's like, that woman? I will go to Nora Roberts' class.
R.L. Stein wrote a lot of books.
Yeah, R.L. Stein class, sure. You can't go to class about the same book over and over again or the same movie. That's why our podcast, they make those podcasts now that are like, it's the Goodfellas Minute. We'll watch Goodfellas 1 minute at a time and talk about it for 45 minutes. Like, that's such a specific thing.
Wait, that's a thing?
Dude, look
Yeah.
up podcasts that are the blank minute. It's tons of movies. I listen to the Heat Minute.
I'm sorry, like, and that sounds dumb as shit.
Yeah, you know what's really dumb though? When they're doing it when they're doing ones that are like the fucking 3rd minute of the end credits, and they're like, well, Greg Roberts was a pretty good costume designer. You're like, why the fuck is this podcast? Nobody gives a shit.
That's
You can't
so
do
dumb.
a class your entire life about one fucking property. It's not.
They need to pick long movies like Titanic at least to get a little longevity.
Oh man, it takes so long, so many minutes to get to the fun part where you put in VHS number 2 and the guy falls and hits the propeller.
I was gonna say I could do 10 episodes on the propeller guy.
That's it. It's the only minute I want to do.
So now the Reverend walks out of the house, and as soon as he walks out, Thelma walks back downstairs, only now she's all dressed. And she's asking, like, where the pastor went. It's like, oh, he left. Well, you could have asked him to stay. Like, he's like, well, why would I have wanted him to stay? Well, if you had any respect for me at all, you would have known I was going to rush downstairs and throw myself at that man's feet. Don't you ever give thought to anybody other than yourself? And then she, like, rips her wig off and runs back up the stairs.
I will say to this, you learn everything you need to know that you already learned it about this character, but also you underscored it a little bit. She comes down in like a big dress and she's doing big, like sexy arm swings and she's got her hair all done up. She's not just dressed, she's like hot dressed.
Like I said, I don't know if it's the times, but I get that was the intent.
That's the intent, I'm saying.
She's wearing like
Yeah.
a big dress that like covers every inch of her. It's not like she's wearing anything like showy or like.
Well, that's what you wear when you're trying to get a man of the cloth.
That's true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You show up wearing, like, at that time, like, what Madonna had the pointy boob stuff. She walked down the stairs wearing that. I don't think he would have wanted to talk to her again.
So she storms upstairs. She's upset that the Reverend had already left. And then you have the deacon who's alone downstairs now, sits on his couch and goes, God, sometimes I think you're the only one that understands that I'm a really great guy.
I hated this ending.
I love this. I feel like it's the button of exactly what his character is. He believes in God. He's a man of God, but he's a selfish psycho too.
It just was too on the nose, him saying it. You show, don't tell. And him saying it out loud, I didn't like.
Sure, but this is a sitcom about a guy who works in a church. He's gonna think of how many times in Sanford and Son, Red Fox looked to the sky and faked a heart attack and said, Elizabeth, I'm coming to see you. It's too much, but it's what the show is.
That's different, though. That's not hitting the theme of the show on the head. He's saying, how come you're the one who understands that deep down I'm a good guy? Like,
yeah, but what you don't know is that heaven for Red Fox is a junkyard.
But I would even be okay with that line as he's taping the check together. So you have a joke with it.
Yeah.
Not to keep going back to that. Like,
Even if he like taped it and like and as he's doing it, looks up and goes, what? Like,
Yeah.
something, just something like that. Or as I'm workshopping as I think it, looks up and goes like, what? And then goes, collections are down 33%.
yeah,
Right. Easy.
Mm.
And you tie that right back in from the beginning.
boom. We need a time machine and get hired.
Yeah, I would imagine that if we walked into the writer's room of Amen as five
The creator
white
of the show
guys,
walks in, sees us all sitting there. It's Shredder, Ninja Turtles 2, babies. They're babies.
It's like, what are these references you keep talking about? How'd you get hired on this show? Stop calling her Wheezy. Her name is Gloria.
But yeah, that was the conclusion of Amen. I don't have a lot.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I liked it. I'm mad none of you said amen at that. That's a fucking layup y'all missed.
Nick just did.
Yeah, but I didn't mean to do it because I like the show.
So did you guys see this was like Johnny Carson's production group? And it started with like, he was like a big fan of the show, but then like he had like a lot of disputes with like the Ed Weinberger, who was like the like creator, writer and stuff like that.
But we've seen a bunch on like Taxi and a million other things.
So he was like kind of telling him like, hey, like live studio audience type of comedy, but like I get like the scripted world. And I guess there was a lot of like dispute between the two, and then the show started to take off, and Carson was like kind of begrudgingly, because he was wrong in his assessments, like, Ed's, kind of eye for the comedy was working. And then he kind of grew to dislike the show because bitterness,
Man after my own heart.
I will say I love Johnny Carson, but there's a lot of stories of him around this time, right? Because 86 to 93-ish maybe is the end of his run of the Tonight Show, and he seemed to be getting pretty bitter by the end of it after doing like 40 years of it, that like times were changing, society was changing. If anybody hasn't seen it, on HBO, the HBO original movie, The Late Shift from like 1995 or so, that's about the like Carson, Leno, Letterman thing, is really great.
Oh, okay.
Very funny.
I'm trying to remember what was the one that had. There was a movie that was made. Was that the one where they were like people who were playing? It was about like the late night wars when the job became available. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, the guy who plays Leno is he's one of the cops in The Fugitive, who's like one of their crew. He's also like the Mohawk punk in Dudes.
What's the name of the movie?
The Late Shift.
I remember seeing it now. I think that was available to rent at like the local movie place.
Leno really did shit all over that.
Yeah, he ruined his fucking legacy by being an asshole.
And that's why the universe was like, take that, Leno's ear, and burnt it right off of him a few months ago.
Wait, Jay Leno burnt his ear off?
I guess I missed that story.
Yeah, me too.
It wasn't a car accident. He was working on a car.
Oh, was that it? I thought he was in the car.
I think he was putting like fuel into like, you pour fuel into like the engine, into the like when you're like working on the.
Talking to the wrong guy.
I know.
Chief.
Yeah, I know. So
I know nothing about cars.
Me too. I've been driving. I'm fucking 38 years old. I've been driving for 5 months. I have no idea, but
I know as much about cars as you know about sports.
Are you talking about like when they like pour it into the carburetor to get
yes,
going?
thank you. I was gonna say it's the carburetor, right? He was doing that and it caught fire, and his face caught fire, and your ear has like nothing but cartilage, so your ears are like the first thing to burns off. So like his whole ear burned off. He got himself off fire. He had to like rebuild an ear out of like.
Yeah, that's why shitty Turtle Freddy had no ears.
It's true. I hate shitty Turtle Freddy so much.
Me too.
Why does he have
It's
to
the
keep
worst.
coming up so often?
Was it last week too, where we did 30 Rock and then we're doing the Leno impersonations now? I wish I had one ready to go.
Oh, you hear about this? Yeah, you hear about this? A carburetor? Get your house on fire?
With Kevin Eubanks. You got a spare ear for me?
Kevin Eubanks is on the...
Jay Leno ear, and the first news article that pops up is mom shocked after the face of Jay Leno appears in her dog's ear. And then like the
What?
one about him like being burnt is like third down.
Mom shocked when Jay Leno eats ear of corn the long way, like Goldberg.
Well, I think at this point we've exhausted this episode and there's nothing left to do but hit the green light or cancel.
Jay, I thought of something. Just real quick before you get into this. Have we ever discussed the possibility of you not going last? Like, what if do you want to just go now?
I could.
Could you change things up a little bit?
Whoa!
Sure.
Hey,
I don't think
now.
I'm going to be a deciding vote on this one anyway.
No, I know. I just, you always have to go last to figure what if you wanted to go first?
Yeah. I'll start it off this time. For me in this episode, it's going to be a cancel. I thought there was a lot of like situational stuff. Like I said, I didn't really think that the main issue was a good main issue to help see what was going on with the characters. I think there was Sherman Hemsley was like very funny in it, but I didn't think he had a lot to work with. And I don't think like his strengths were really highlighted in this show very much, at least in this episode. And I don't know, the overall chemistry between the cast, I didn't think was like super there. It was just something about it was just kind of dull for me. It wasn't a compelling enough story. And maybe it's just like this whole thing just being set in the church and not leaving at all. And I mean, I don't know. It didn't work for me. Very little like interest in watching more of it. I like classic sitcoms. And if there was like a good episode, I would watch it, I guess. But this didn't really do it for me. I found myself time watching a lot on this one. So for me, it's a cancel. Joe?
Opposite to you, the last 2 episodes we've done were the most time watchers for me, and this was some of the easier notes and watching I've done in a while.
Wait, 30 Rock was a time watcher for you?
Oh, sorry, not 30 Rock. What do we do the last 2 before that?
Selfie and
Selfie for fucking Sure was one of the worst ones I've ever had.
Todd Margaret?
Bosom Buddies right before that?
Bosom Buddies was another one too, and I love Tom Hanks, but that was a hard watch. Todd Margaret was a good one too. I liked Todd Margaret. I enjoyed this. I enjoy the characters. I think we talked about it earlier, how you feel about the opening of this show, where you were like, I don't get this. And I was like, no, he's a curmudgeon, but he also is good with the kids, is how I feel about this show. I like seeing both sides of this coin. I think there are problems with this pilot we talked about. Like, Marvin should be a character with his mom going forward. You know, some of the things don't make any sense at all. And again, part of it is hard, right? Because this isn't streaming anywhere. There's not a good version of this to watch, which is insane, right? This should be remastered so people could see it. Especially with Sherman Hemsley being such a famous person, right? And everybody who's in this has done a million things. I really enjoyed this. I mentioned it earlier. I was on Etsy looking at like somebody selling a Blu-ray collection of the entire series. If I'm going to go out and possibly spend $50 to watch the whole show, it's hard for me to say it's not a green light. So it's a green light for me.
Gordo.
Yeah, I'm like torn a little bit because it's not a bad show per se, right? Like if you're going to make the comparison to shows in the day, right? Back in that time frame, like you have to sort of look at it like that. I just think that this is the wrong episode to start off with. I just did not, there's just something about it that I didn't like. Like I found myself 4 minutes in being like, oh, that's only the first scene. That's only 4 minutes. And just watching it and just doing that from scene to scene, waiting for it to be funny, I just felt like the characters didn't feel like they gelled together. It just, in a rare circumstance, like doing this episode usually will lean me to be like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I'll greenlight it. In this case, it's actually doing the opposite. So I'm with you, Jay. I'm canceling this.
Ferg.
A real red flag was Jay mentioned he didn't laugh until one of the last scenes of the entire show. That's not a good thing when it's a sitcom. I'm just going to talk about a few good things about it. I like that it made me think, and it was a real moral dilemma. Unfortunately, that's not what you want in your sitcom. I don't think it was funny enough, especially with the level of talent of Sherman Hemsley. What the fuck is it?
It's Hemsley. It's
hard
like,
because it's Hemsley with no L, like Triple H is Hemsley. Yeah,
but it's not as bad as I made it out to be talking through the thing. So I am gonna cancel it, but it's not a hard cancel like you might expect. Like I said, I like that it made me think, made me look at things and stuff, but it wasn't there. The show was a bit of a mess, so cancel.
And Nick.
Yeah, this Sherman Hemsley is a sitcom icon. His character as George Jefferson is, way the top of the list, right? But this show, wow, God, boring, unoriginal, unfunny dog water. Like, I watched the clock the entire time on this one. It's a very, very different from Ferg. It's a very hard cancel for me. Like, this was a terrible show. Like, I did not enjoy almost a single moment of this, like, at all. I didn't really follow the point of the plot, and to have them like try to give you a glimpse of like the rest of the show. I have absolutely no faith that it's going to be anything more than just like cheesy, shoehorned moral garbage. It's just this was a terrible experience watching this episode. I hate this show. I don't want to ever watch any more of it. So very hard cancel.
Well, with that in mind, it is definitely a cancel from us. So sorry to Amen, you do not live on to see episode 2. I want to remind all of you guys who are listening, go to S1E1pod.com, find all the links to our socials, do all the stuff I said at the top of the episode. Rate, review, subscribe. That stuff does help. We don't really push that stuff a lot, but it does mean a lot when you guys can do that stuff. And hit us up. Follow us on Instagram, X, do all that stuff. We post videos all week long, and we like to hear from you guys, know shows you want us to cover. So with all that in mind, thank you guys. We'll catch you again next week with another new episode. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best jailbird.